Whenever the clock strikes 1 a.m., something strange happens in Bola's bedroom. Her husband, Solomon, always wakes up on the cold floor, never on the bed. He thinks it's just a bad dream. But what if it's not a dream at all? What if something else is sleeping with his wife every night? This is not just a story, it's a true life story that happened right here in Lagos. A tale of love, fear, and a spirit husband that refused to let go. Bola's mother was barren. For 14 long years, she had prayed, wept, and tried everything within her reach. She went from one hospital to another, from churches to herbal homes, yet every test, every effort, ended the same way: nothing is wrong with you. Her name was Madame Gold, a woman whose laughter had faded over the years. Her husband, Mr. Ade, stood by her side through it all, even when people whispered that he should take another wife. One hot afternoon, after yet another fruitless hospital visit in Ikeja, Madame Gold sat quietly at a small roadside restaurant. The noise of traffic filled the air: horns, shouting conductors, and the smell of roasted plantain drifting from a nearby stall. As she stared blankly into space, an old woman dressed in faded ankara appeared beside her. The woman's voice was calm and strange as she said, "You cry for a child every day."
Do not cry again, my child. Your prayers have been answered.
But your tears have already reached where no prayer can. Startled, Madame Gold turned to look at her. "Who are you?" she asked softly. The woman smiled faintly. "Don't ask who I am. Just know this. The river has heard you. You will carry a child. But when the time comes, remember that not every gift comes free." Before Madame Gold could respond, the woman was gone, as if she had melted into the crowd. Confused and shaken, she returned home that evening feeling both afraid and strangely hopeful. That night, she dreamt of standing in the middle of a calm lagoon. The moonlight danced on the surface of the water, and a soft voice whispered, "Your time has come." Weeks later, Madame Gold began to feel strange sensations in her body. Her appetite changed, her strength returned, and soon she discovered she was pregnant. Her joy filled the entire neighborhood. After 14 long years of waiting, her womb had finally opened. Her husband danced, neighbors sang, and everyone came to celebrate what they called a miracle from God. 9 months later, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Bola. The delivery went smoothly, and the midwife saw nothing unusual. Bola cried loudly, her tiny fists clenched tightly, as though she came into the world with purpose. From that day, Madame Gold's joy returned. She held her baby every night and whispered, "You are my miracle, my reason to live." But sometimes when Bola slept, her mother would notice her smiling at nothing or staring deeply at corners of the room where no one stood. It didn't seem strange at first. She thought all babies did that. As Bola grew, she became unusually quiet and mature for her age. Her eyes carried a depth far beyond her years, and when she spoke, her words were calm and wise. Everyone loved her, yet sometimes her presence made people uneasy. Not because of what she did, but because of the calm energy that surrounded her. As Bola entered her teenage years, something strange began to happen more often. She would see the shadow of a handsome man standing quietly by her window whenever she was alone. Tall, calm, and protective. At first, she thought it was her imagination. But she soon noticed that whenever she felt sad or scared, the shadow would appear, almost like it was watching over her. One thing was certain, the spirit was jealous, deeply jealous. He didn't want any boy near her. When other teenage girls her age were having boyfriends, Bola was always alone. Not because she didn't want love, but because every time a boy got close to her, something would go wrong. The first time she tried to talk to a boy she liked, he suddenly stopped showing up at school. When she finally asked him why, he whispered in fear, "Bola, I saw something, a man. He said you belonged to him. He told me to leave his wife alone." Bola froze. "Wife? What are you talking about?" she asked, but the boy just turned and ran. It didn't happen once. It happened again and again. Every boy that admired her ran away, trembling and confused. Each one said the same thing. A man warned them to stay away from his wife. Bola didn't understand it. She began to feel cursed, different from every other girl. Sometimes, she would lie awake at night and whisper into the darkness, "Who are you? Why are you doing this to me?" And though no one answered, she could feel it, a hand brushing her hair, a cold breath near her neck, and a presence that refused to leave. When Bola gained admission into the university in Lagos, she promised herself a fresh start. She wanted to forget the strange things from her teenage years and live like every other girl. At school, she met a guy named Ben, charming and intelligent. He treated her with so much love that, for the first time, Bola felt safe. She thought maybe, just maybe, her life was finally becoming normal. But that peace didn't last long. One night, Bola had a dream. She saw herself in a dark room, and standing before her was the same tall, handsome spirit man she used to see as a shadow. His eyes glowed faintly like burning coals. He said softly, "Bola, the one you love is betraying you. He is with your friend." She woke up sweating, her heart pounding. She tried to brush it off. She didn't want to believe it. But days later, her world shattered. She caught Ben holding hands with her closest friend behind the faculty building. The same way the spirit had said it would happen. Her legs went weak. She ran to her hostel, locked the door, and cried until her pillow was soaked with tears. That night, as she lay heartbroken, she felt a strange comfort, an invisible hand gently wiping her tears and a whisper in her ear. "Didn't I warn you, my wife?" The air turned cold and her light flickered. Bola froze, realizing it wasn't just a dream, he was real. After the heartbreak with Ben, Bola tried to focus only on her studies. She avoided relationships and spent most of her time in the library or her room. She thought keeping to herself would bring peace, but fate had other plans. One of her lecturers, a married man known for harassing female students, began to show interest in her. At first, Bola tried to stay respectful and distant, but the man became persistent. He started calling her after lectures, asking her to visit his office privately. When she refused, his tone changed. "If you don't accept my proposal," he warned one afternoon, his voice low and threatening, "you'll fail this course. I can make that happen." Bola went home trembling. She cried and prayed for help, not knowing that something or someone had already heard her. That night, while the lecturer slept peacefully in his air-conditioned room, a heavy wind began to blow. The windows rattled, the light flickered, and suddenly, a dark figure appeared at the foot of his bed. It was the spirit husband, tall, broad, and glowing faintly with fury. His voice echoed like thunder. "When next you threaten my wife, your life may go for it." The lecturer gasped, frozen in fear. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. The spirit's fiery eyes burned into his soul, and the room shook violently before everything went silent. By morning, the lecturer woke drenched in sweat, shaking uncontrollably. He rushed to campus, praying never to see Bola again. But when he did see her in class, he nearly fainted. His hands trembled so badly that his pen dropped to the floor. He couldn't even look at her face, only whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." From that day onward, he avoided her completely. He even changed the way he marked her papers, giving her high grades without asking a single question. Months later, something terrifying happened. Bola was returning from night classes when a black van stopped beside her. Before she could scream, two men jumped out, grabbed her, and dragged her inside. They tied her hands and covered her eyes. Bola's heart pounded as she prayed silently for help. The men said nothing, just drove deep into a lonely road outside Lagos. Inside the van, the air suddenly grew heavy. A strange silence filled the vehicle. One of the kidnappers complained that the engine was heating up, though the night was cold. Then, out of nowhere, a loud bang shook the van. The driver swore he saw someone standing in the middle of the road, tall, dark, and glowing faintly. But when they looked again, no one was there. Fear began to spread among them. The youngest kidnapper shouted, "Let's drop her. I don't like this girl. Something is following her." But the others ignored him. As they argued, the wind began to blow fiercely inside the closed van. The ropes around Bola's wrists loosened on their own. Then chaos broke out. One of the kidnappers suddenly turned on the other, shouting that he had heard his voice in his head, calling him a fool. In seconds, All of them began to fight each other like madmen. Punches flew, blood spilled, and Bola crawled out of the van trembling. From a distance, she turned and saw something terrifying, the tall, shadowy man standing beside the burning van, his eyes glowing red. His voice echoed in her mind. No one touches what belongs to me. Moments later, the police arrived, alerted by a passerby, but when they reached the scene, all they found were the kidnappers unconscious on the ground. Bola was safe. From that night, she no longer doubted it. The spirit husband wasn't just watching over her, he was living with her, protecting her, but also controlling her life in ways she couldn't escape. One night, Bola had a strange dream, one that felt so real, she could still remember the scent of flowers when she woke up. In the dream, she stood in a beautiful garden filled with white lilies. A soft breeze blew through her hair, and gentle drums played in the distance. People dressed in glowing white garments surrounded her, singing softly. Then she looked ahead, and there he was, the same tall, handsome spirit man she had seen since her teenage years. He was smiling, dressed like a groom in a shining white robe. Without fear or hesitation, Bola found herself walking toward him. The people in white clapped as he stretched out his hand and said, "Finally, my wife." A golden ring appeared in his hand, glowing with light. He slipped it gently on her finger, and the ground trembled slightly beneath them. "From this day," he said, "you are mine, in body and in spirit." Before Bola could speak, he leaned forward, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You will never walk alone." Suddenly, she opened her eyes and found herself lying in her bed. Morning sunlight streamed through her curtain. She sat up slowly, touched her forehead, and smiled faintly. "What a dream," she said softly to herself. There was no fear in her heart, no strange feeling around her. The room was peaceful. She thought it was just an ordinary dream, a beautiful fantasy born from her imagination. Little did she know that dream was a real covenant, a spiritual wedding that would soon change her life forever. After that strange dream, Bola's life changed completely. She no longer saw or felt the spirit husband. The cold air that used to sweep through her room at night disappeared. For the first time in her life, her sleep was peaceful. Months turned into years, and Bola finally felt free. She finished school with excellent grades and soon got a good job in one of the top companies in Lagos. Her intelligence and hard work made her rise quickly. Within a short time, she held a top position in her department, respected by everyone. The staff admired her confidence, though none of them knew the battles she had once fought in silence. During one of the company's meetings, she met Solomon, a young man newly transferred from the Abuja branch. He was calm, kind, and easy to talk to, the kind of man that made Bola's heart feel safe again. At first, she kept her distance, still unsure of love after all she had experienced. But Solomon's sincerity slowly melted her heart. He never rushed her, he just stayed close, always ready to help, always making her laugh. For the first time in many years, Bola began to believe that she could have a normal life, a real love, free from shadows and fear. She thought the spirit husband had finally left her for good. But peace doesn't last forever. The spirit was only silent, watching. Solomon and Bola's love grew stronger with every passing day. Their connection felt pure, almost destined. After 2 years of dating, Solomon proposed, and Bola said yes with tears of joy in her eyes. Their wedding was simple but beautiful. Friends, family, laughter, and a sense of peace Bola hadn't felt in years. Everyone said they were the perfect couple. When they moved into their new apartment in Ikeja, Bola was certain that all the strange memories of her past were gone for good. The house felt bright and full of love. But peace can be deceptive. It started on a quiet Wednesday night. Around 1 a.m., Solomon woke up shivering on the floor. Confused, he looked around. Bola was fast asleep on the bed. He didn't remember falling off. The bed was high, and there were no signs of struggle. He laughed it off, thinking maybe he had rolled down by accident. The next night, the same thing happened. Exactly 1 a.m. Again, he found himself on the cold tiled floor while Bola slept peacefully. By the third night, it happened again, same time, same way. But this time, he woke up gasping for breath, his body cold as ice. He sat up and stared at Bola. She was sleeping soundly, but something about her face looked different, too calm, too still. And for a moment, he thought he saw a dark hand gently caressing her cheek. Solomon blinked hard, his heart racing. When he looked again, the hand was gone. He stood up and whispered, "Bola. Bola, wake up," but she didn't move. It was as though she was under a spell. Every night after that, the same thing happened. Exactly at 1 a.m., Solomon would wake up on the floor, trembling, with no memory of how he got there. During the day, everything seemed normal. Bola would cook, smile, and go to work as if nothing strange was happening. But the nights told a different story. Solomon started to dread sleeping. He would try to stay awake, but no matter how hard he fought it, sleep would overtake him, and he would always wake up on the floor. He didn't know that when he fell asleep, someone else came to share his wife's bed. One night, Solomon decided he had had enough. He pretended to be asleep, determined to find out what really happened at 1 a.m. As the clock struck 2, a sudden coldness filled the room. The curtains began to sway slowly, though the windows were closed. The light bulb flickered once, twice, then went dim. Solomon lay still, barely breathing. That was when he heard it, a faint whisper beside Bola's bed. A man's voice, low and deep, speaking her name gently. Bola stirred, her breathing changed, as though she was trapped in a dream. Solomon tried to move, but he couldn't. Something unseen held him down, freezing every muscle in his body. He could see the bedsheet shifting, as if an invisible figure had lain beside his wife. The air grew thick, heavy with a strange energy. Bola's face was peaceful, as if she was lost somewhere between dream and reality. Solomon's heart raced. He wanted to shout, to call her name, but no sound came out of his mouth. He could only watch, frozen, as a shadow moved across the wall, tall and faintly glowing. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The coldness faded, the light brightened, and Solomon could move again. He rushed to Bola's side, shaking her awake. She opened her eyes slowly, confused. "What happened?" she asked, her voice sleepy. Solomon couldn't answer. His lips trembled as he whispered, There's something in this room." But Bola looked around and saw nothing, only silence and peace. She smiled weakly and told him he must have been dreaming. Yet deep inside, Solomon knew what he saw was real, and that whatever had claimed his wife in the spirit world wasn't ready to let her go. The next morning, Solomon couldn't hold it in any longer. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at Bola as she dressed for work. His hands were shaking, his eyes red from a sleepless night. "Bola," he said quietly, "I can't keep pretending nothing is happening in this house." She turned, confused. "What do you mean?" Solomon's voice trembled. "You're cheating on me," he said. Bola froze, the words hitting her like a slap. "What? Solomon, how could you say that?" "I see things, Bola," he shouted, standing up. "Every night at 1 a.m., something happens in this room. I hear a man's voice beside you. The bed moves, the air changes, and I can't move. I can't speak. But I see it. Don't tell me I'm mad." Bola took a step back, tears forming in her eyes. "Solomon, I swear to you, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't see anyone. I don't hear anything." He paced the room, holding his head. "Then explain why I keep waking up on the floor every night. Explain the shadow on the wall. Bola, something's wrong with you or with us." Bola sat on the bed, trembling. Deep down, she wanted to deny everything, but part of her remembered that strange dream years ago. The wedding in the garden, the man in white calling her his wife. Could it be connected? She didn't want to believe it. "Please, Solomon," she whispered, "let's pray. Maybe it's just an attack." Solomon nodded slowly, but in his heart, fear had already taken root. He didn't know whether he was fighting a dream, or a spirit that had claimed his wife long before he ever met her. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in their home grew heavier. Solomon barely spoke, and Bola spent more time alone, praying and fasting for peace. They had been married for 2 years, yet they still had no child. One night, Bola had a dream that felt so real it made her heart race when she woke up. In the dream, she was heavily pregnant. Her belly was full, and people around her were singing and dancing, celebrating her motherhood. She could see herself glowing, dressed in white, holding a baby wrapped in gold cloth. Standing beside her was a tall man, smiling proudly, calling her his wife. The man leaned close and whispered, "You will soon bring forth my child." When Bola opened her eyes the next morning, she was sweating and breathing heavily. She touched her stomach. It was flat. But the dream had felt so real that tears filled her eyes. She turned to Solomon, who was still asleep, and whispered, "God, please let this dream come true. I want to carry my husband's child." But what Bola didn't realize was that the dream wasn't a blessing, it was a sign. In the spiritual world, a covenant was already sealed. The spirit husband had planted something, not in the physical, but deep in her destiny. From that night, Bola began to feel strange movements in her stomach at odd hours, as if something inside her was alive. Yet every medical test said she wasn't pregnant. Solomon noticed her constant discomfort and confusion. "Bola," he said one evening, "I think we need to see a pastor. This isn't normal anymore." Bola agreed. And that decision to seek help would uncover secrets darker than either of them imagined. As the days passed, Bola's dreams became more frequent and more confusing. Some nights, she saw herself surrounded by children, laughing, playing, calling her mummy. She would carry them, kiss them, and feel joy bubbling in her chest. But by 1 a.m., that joy always turned into fear. The air in her room would grow cold, and the same invisible presence would appear, strong, possessive, and irresistible. She could feel the spirit husband touching her, whispering softly into her ears, "You are mine, Bola, you belong to me." Even when she tried to pray, her lips would freeze. Her body would no longer respond to her will. And though her spirit cried for help, something within her seemed to enjoy what was happening. Solomon would wake up beside her, terrified. He couldn't see who was with her, but he could see her face, her expressions of pleasure, her soft moans, her body moving as if someone invisible was holding her close. One night, unable to bear it any longer, Solomon shouted, "Bola, who are you with? Are you cheating on me even in my own bed?" Bola gasped awake, trembling and crying. "No, Solomon, please. I swear I don't know what happens to me. Something comes every night. I can't stop it." But Solomon couldn't understand. He had never believed in spiritual things. He only saw what his eyes showed him. His wife in the arms of an unseen lover. That night, Solomon packed his pillow and slept on the couch. The distance between them grew wider, and Bola spent the rest of the night weeping, begging God for mercy. When dawn came, she felt weak. Yet, deep inside her, she still remembered the children from her dream, their laughter echoing softly, as if calling her back into that world where she felt safe and loved. She began to wonder, could those be my spirit husband's children? Or is God trying to show me something? But before she could find an answer, something strange happened again. She woke up one night and saw wet footprints on the floor, leading from the door to her bed. The next morning, Bola went to work trying to hide the dark circles beneath her eyes. Her colleagues greeted her warmly, but one woman new to the office seemed to stare at her too long, her eyes calm, deep, and almost knowing. After that terrifying 1 a.m. experience, Bola tried to bury herself in work. She felt fragile, tired, and afraid to tell anyone the whole truth. Her colleagues noticed the change, some with pity, others with curiosity. A week later, the company hired a new staff in her section, Tosin, a sharp, ambitious woman who smiled too brightly and watched Bola with eyes that did not hide envy. Tosin arrived with expensive shoes and a polished resume. She carried herself like someone sharpening a ladder with other people's grief. Tosin began whispering to the manager about small errors, a missed file, a late report, little things that could be blown up into unprofessional behavior. She was careful, nothing outright criminal, only a pattern she could present as proof that Bola was no longer fit for a top position. Rumors spread quietly. A client complained that an invoice was delayed. A minor compliance form was misplaced. Tosin kept her distance, but kept smiling, always ready with a sympathetic eyebrow toward the manager when Bola walked by. One morning, the HR office called Bola in for a routine discussion. Her heart sank. The meeting turned cold. The manager read from a list of small faults and missed deadlines, Then, with a professional sigh, told her the company no longer found her a good fit. They were giving her a final warning, effectively stripping her of the position she had earned. The room blurred for Bola. She left the office in shock, clutching her bag. That night she could not stop crying. Alone in the apartment, she pressed her face into her pillow and wept until her shoulders shook. The unfairness tasted like bile. The loneliness felt like a new wound. Across town, Tosin celebrated quietly with colleagues, a polite drink and the satisfaction of a plan that had worked. She thought she had outmaneuvered a rival, but that night something changed on Tosin's way home. She had hardly closed her apartment door when a sudden cold entered the room. The lights flickered. The mirror over her dresser fogged as if breath had pressed close to the glass. In the reflection she saw not herself, but a tall, dark figure behind her, its eyes burning with slow, steady fire. A voice like thunder filled the room. "You touch what belongs to me, and you will pay." Tosin's blood turned to ice. She fell to her knees, begging for mercy. The fear was not ordinary. It was a deep spiritual terror that rooted itself in her bones. In the days that followed, Tosin's confidence crumbled. Small things she had always controlled suddenly escaped her. She fumbled presentations, misplaced documents, and found herself tongue-tied in meetings. Colleagues who once praised her now frowned. The manager who had once listened to her complaints laughed off her concerns. Her little web of lies began to unravel. Within a fortnight, HR called Tosin in, but this time it was she who was accused of misconduct, falsifying reports, manipulating feedback, and creating a hostile environment. Evidence she had planted to push Bola down now pointed squarely at her. The company had no choice but to let her go. Tosin left the building that afternoon with her bag over her shoulder, panic and humiliation on her face. She had no explanation that made sense to the people who watched her go. Only the memory of a shadow in a mirror and a voice that promised retribution. Word spread around the office that she had been fired. Some whispered that karma had found her. Others said it was because of Bola's quiet dignity that the truth came out. But only Bola knew what had happened in the small hours, the way the spirit had moved for her even when she could not ask. When Bola learned Tosin had been sacked, she felt nothing like triumph. Her tears had dried into a hollow ache. The victory had a bitter taste because it did not fix what had been taken from her. That week, a new woman joined the staff canteen conversations, Mrs. Adetutu, the HR officer who moved with a calm that made people confess their secrets. She watched Bola once, then approached her with the knowledge of someone who had met violence before and survived. "Something follows you," Adetutu told Bola gently. "I have seen it with my own eyes." She did not offer judgment, only a steady hand. "If you want help, meet me after work." Bola agreed, weary but desperate. She went to the place Adetutu named, an old, quiet spot outside the city where prayers were sometimes said and oaths remembered. The woman's voice was low. The words she spoke were not entirely Christian nor completely tribal. They felt like a language older than both. "Tonight the air will thicken," Adetutu warned. "Stay close to your husband. Do not speak of me at home yet. The spirit knows of me now, it will grow angry." That night the clock leaned toward 1 a.m. as if the whole city was holding its breath. The curtains began to stir though the windows were shut, and the fan slowed as though something heavy leaned into the room. Solomon rolled off the bed again, pushed, not fallen. Bola heard the whisper she had heard all her life, "You are mine." "Stay away from that woman." It slid across the room like a cold blade. Bola wanted to cry out, to call Adetutu's name, but the voice wrapped around her lungs and strangled her words. She could only stare as shadow folded itself over her like a lover and a jailer at once. At dawn, Solomon woke on the floor, exhausted and shaking. Outside, a gust of wind slammed a loose shutter. The sound cut through the silence like a warning. Bola sat on the bed and whispered he came again. Her voice was small. Adetutu's words from the mountain echoed in her mind. The battle has just begun. That night, when Bola slept, she dreamed again of white lilies and a garden wedding. The man in white smiled as he slid a ring onto her finger and said, "You are mine." This time, the dream left her with no fear, only a terrible, calm certainty. She woke abruptly, the clock beside her bed flashing 1 a.m. And outside, the wind rose as if the whole city were preparing for a storm. At home, Solomon tried to comfort her, but something inside him had changed. The nights of being thrown to the floor, of watching his wife arch and moan in her sleep as if someone invisible touched her, it had eaten deep into his mind. One morning, while dressing for work, he stared at Bola. She looked peaceful, almost glowing, as she adjusted her scarf. He wanted to believe she was innocent, that she didn't know what happened when the clock struck 1 a.m., but how could he ignore what he had seen with his own eyes? That afternoon, Solomon met his friends at a nearby bar after work. They laughed, talked about politics, football, and traffic. But Solomon was quiet, lost in thought. Finally, one of them, Kunal, nudged him. "Guy, you never laughed today. What didn't happen?" Solomon sighed deeply. "You people won't believe me if I talk." "Try us," Kunal said, sipping his beer. "Na Lagos, we don't see things." Solomon hesitated, then said, "Every night, exactly 1 a.m., I find myself on the floor. And my wife, she's on the bed moving, like someone's with her." His voice cracked slightly, "But there's no one there. I can't see anything." For a moment, the table went silent. Then one friend, Dare, chuckled nervously. "Solomon, a beg. No start all this Nollywood gist. Maybe you daydream." "I'm not dreaming," Solomon said, his tone sharp. "I feel it. I hear whispers. Sometimes I even smell perfume, not hers." Kunal laughed uneasily. "Guy, maybe your wife just restless. All this your midnight imagination fit be stress." Solomon slammed his palm on the table. "Stress doesn't push a man from the bed every night." His voice trembled, not with anger, but fear. The friends exchanged awkward glances. No one knew what to say. Finally, Kunal patted his shoulder. "You need prayer, my guy. Maybe small deliverance." Solomon forced a smile. "If I told you it's not a ghost, but something that loves her, you'd call me mad." That night, he sat awake till 1 a.m., determined to see for himself. But the moment the clock ticked, a deep sleep fell on him like a heavy blanket. When he woke again, he was, as always, on the cold floor. He looked up at Bola, who slept soundly, her lips curved in a small, dreamy smile. A faint scent of ocean breeze filled the air. And Solomon whispered to himself, "Who are you? And what are you doing with my wife?" He didn't know that outside their window, a tall shadow leaned against the moonlight, watching him, possessive and unblinking. In the night, Solomon sat alone in the living room, staring blankly at the clock as it ticked toward 1 a.m. His hands trembled as he whispered to himself, "How can I be the one who paid Bola's bride price, yet another man enjoys her every night, right beside me?" His heart was breaking, his mind tearing apart between love and fear. He didn't know whether to confront her or to run. And as the wall clock struck 1 a.m., that same soft wind brushed through their bedroom again. Solomon's eyes widened. He heard Bola moan softly in her sleep, in pleasure. He turned slowly toward the bed. There was no one else there, and yet, the mattress was sinking beside her. Tears filled his eyes. "Who are you?" he whispered into the darkness. But only silence answered, thick, heavy, and alive. This is not just a story. It's a true life story that happened in Lagos, Nigeria. Do you believe that spirit husbands truly exist? If you were in Solomon's shoes, watching your wife being touched by something invisible every night, what would you do? Drop your thoughts in the comments and type part 2. If you want to find out what happens next when Mrs. Adetutu and Solomon finally steps in to challenge the spirit husband that has claimed Bola as his wife.